Hello, Greek students. Welcome to week 10 in our class. We have gotten to the end of indicative verbs. This is the last time we'll have explicit lectures and questions and homework assignments on indicative verbs. So last week we really worked on reviewing the suffixes for indicative verbs and sort of really getting those down so that it's easier for you to identify the person and the number of different indicative verb forms. And in this week we're going to continue our review of indicative verbs by me presenting to you and also Black presenting to you sort of a step-by-step method of what you ought to do when you come across an indicative verb in translation. So you're going to look for certain things that's going to help you figure out the parsing information for indicative verbs. So what we're going to do is practice that method, not only with respect to just going through the method on indicative verbs, but also with parsing indicative verbs. And hopefully you will find that this method will make it a little bit easier for you to figure out the parsing information for different indicative verbs and the sort of the sea of different forms that you are swimming in right now. And I realize that it is very vast. Becomes a little bit more manageable with this method that I'm going to present to you in one of the videos, and Black is going to lay out in more words or more printed words than I do. So what I've tried to do is sort of simplify what Black presents into a more condensed form for you. And then the other thing that we're doing is moving to what is called third declension nouns. So we've already at the very beginning of the semester introduced second declension and first declension nouns. This week we introduced what are called third declension nouns. So we saw in those first few weeks that second declension nouns are normally associated with the masculine gender. There are, of course, exceptions to that. And the first declension nouns are normally associated with the feminine gender. And again, there's, of course, exceptions to that. Third declension nouns are not, and I should also say second declension nouns are also associated with the neuter. Third declension nouns are not associated with any one or two of the three genders. Rather, it's a group of nouns that has masculine forms, it has neuter forms, and it has feminine forms. And so this, for this reason, it's going to be important to pay particular attention in the vocabulary lists to whether a given noun has the masculine definite article after it, the neuter definite article after it, or the feminine definite article after it, because oftentimes the only way you'll know the gender of a noun in the third declension, you won't really get a hint to its gender by the form of it, but rather you'll know it from your memorization of vocabulary. So a large group of nouns, a very important group because it contains many Greek nouns of all three different genders. And I'll say from the outset, give you fair warning, that third declension is one of the things that Greek students tend to find somewhat difficult. And the reason for this is not because their forms are incredibly difficult. I'm going to give you sort of a mnemonic, as I did for the second declension and the first declension, for recognizing third declensions, the basic endings, and memorizing those basic endings of the first declension. And some of them are a little tricky, particularly in the nominative singular. But the reason that Greek students often find the third declension so difficult is because you've already gotten so used to the first and second declension, and then the third declension gets added in. All of this to say, if you have memorized that definite article paradigm well, you're going to be in really good shape for recognizing third declension endings, because they're going to take the same definite article, so that you'll be able to get all your information about the noun, the case, the gender, and the number from the definite article itself when it is attached to the noun. So that's my fair warning, but also my note of hope for you. And so as far as how we're getting to these objectives, what you're doing for this week, no major assignments or exams. We have one homework. That's the first one, is really wrapping up and shoring up your knowledge and practicing this method that Black and I are going to lay out this week for indicative verbs. And then homework number 2 is going to be translation with questions, particularly focusing on third declension nouns. So when you come to homework number 2, hopefully what you'll find is actually recognizing the verbs is the easier part of the homework, and the harder part, the new information, is going to be those new noun forms in the third declension. As always, we'll have a vocabulary quiz that's primarily devoted to these new third declension nouns, and then a grammar quiz that is both deals with some parsing, so that you're putting into practice the method that I'm giving you in this week with respect to parsing indicative verbs. So you'll be choosing parsing information from multiple choice questions. And then you'll also be dealing with the third declension endings. And this will be both providing the basic forms of the third declension. So there's just the third declension basic endings for you to memorize for this week that you will be responsible for representing in the grammar quiz, but also selecting the parsing information for various third declension nouns.